My name is Evelyn Harper, and I'm 68 years old. For most of my life, I've been a school administrator, a mother, a caretaker, and lately a traveler between endless appointments and errands. Today, I was supposed to be enjoying a rare morning to myself, but the apartment walls were thin as tissue, and my patience thinner than ever. At 6:30, a baby's wail pierced through the floor above me. I groaned, pressing my hand to my forehead as the noise ricocheted off every wall. Then came the muffled argument between neighbors in the next unit's shouts, punctuated by slamming doors. My kettle whistled, but I couldn't even hear it over the chaos. I poured water over the tea bag anyway and stared out my kitchen window at the endless line of cars inching through the morning traffic horns, blaring engines, growling. This apartment had been convenient, sure. Close to the grocery store, the bus line, and the tiny park where I sometimes walked to clear my head. But convenience had come at the cost of peace. Every day I measured how much patience I had left. Every day I realized it was running out. My back ached from sitting at a desk too long. My ears throbbed from noise I couldn't escape, and my mind twisted in knots I could neither untie nor ignore. I moved my teacup to the small table by the window and watched the steam curl in the morning light. I thought about my late husband, about the years spent raising my daughter, about the sacrifices I'd made that no one had ever noticed. There had been birthdays, parent-teacher conferences, work trips, family gatherings, and always the needs of everyone else came first. And now, at this stage in my life, I realized I had given enough. I had earned a space that was mine, a home, where I could finally breathe, think, and exist without interruption. I made a decision then, one that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to buy my own house. Not a mansion, not something ostentatious, just a real home, walls I could trust, a backyard to plant flowers, a kitchen that was mine. I would do it on my own terms quietly, without anyone's approval or interference. I sipped the lukewarm tea and let the noise wash over me one last time. Tomorrow, I would begin looking for a house. Tomorrow, the apartment would no longer define my mornings. I parked in front of my daughter Susan's townhouse, a neat row of red brick units lined with flowering dogwoods. She was 38, juggling her career friends and the tiny apartment she shared with her 2 cats. I had always admired her independence, but today I felt a knot of nervous anticipation. The door swung open before I could knock. Susan stood there, hair in a messy bun, arms crossed, her smile polite but guarded. "Hey, Mom," she said. "Come on in." Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of coffee and basil. My parents were already seated on the couch. Mom's smile was careful. Dad's eyes scanned me as if weighing my words before I spoke. I hesitated, then said, "I've been thinking, I want to buy a house." A pause. Mom set down her mug deliberately. "A house? Evelyn, are you sure? With your health and age, it's a big responsibility." Dad added, voice calm but firm. "You've lived here all this time. Renting isn't perfect, but you're comfortable. Is a house really necessary?" Susan shifted, fidgeting with a pillow. "Mom, maybe it's about having your own space," she said carefully. "But what about family? We could use more help. Maybe now isn't the right time." I felt irritation tangled with guilt. I had spent decades giving to my career, my family, and everyone else. Now, wanting something for myself, they seemed disappointed. Concerned, yes, but also subtly judging me for putting my needs first. "I've been saving," I said, steadying my voice. "I want a place that's mine where I can live peacefully without constant noise or interruptions." Mom softened slightly. "We just want to make sure you've thought it through. Don't rush." Dad nodded. "Exactly. We care about you, Evelyn. That's all." I noticed the tension in Susan's eyes, doubt, maybe even a touch of resentment. I took a slow breath and smiled. I know. I'll be careful. But this is important to me. As I left their apartment, the decision was clear. If they couldn't support me, I would keep this one to myself. This house would be mine and no one else's. That evening, I sank into the worn armchair by my apartment window, staring at the city lights shimmering through the smudged glass. Traffic hummed below, distant sirens wailing, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I knew what I had to do. No one would stop me this time. My dream of my home was too important to leave to anyone's approval. I picked up the phone and dialed Scout, a realtor I'd trusted for years. He answered instantly, cheerful, as always. Evelyn. How are you? I'm ready, Scout, I said, steadying my voice. I want to buy a house. Somewhere quiet, manageable, nothing extravagant. But a place that's mine. He chuckled softly. About time. Let's start with your priorities. Bedrooms, yard, neighborhoods. I outlined my vision: 3 bedrooms, a spacious living area, a backyard large enough for gardening, quiet streets away from traffic and neighbors who respected privacy. With each detail, my heart lifted. This wasn't a vague wish anymore, I was taking control. Scout promised to find options within my budget. After hanging up, I wrestled with the secrecy. Part of me ached at hiding this from Susan and my parents, imagining their judgment and subtle guilt-tripping. But a quiet thrill of independence coursed through me. This was my choice, my money, my life. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in research. I studied listings online, noted properties that matched my dream, and drove past neighborhoods to feel the streets, the trees, the light falling on the houses. Each small discovery fueled my anticipation. By the week's end, I had 3 promising homes, each closer to the calm mornings and quiet evenings I craved. For the first time in decades, the idea of a space that was truly mine didn't feel impossible. It felt inevitable. That night I went to bed with a flutter of hope. Tomorrow I would begin visiting these houses, one step closer to a life I would claim entirely for myself. The day Scout drove me to the house, my heart thumped with anticipation. Nestled on a quiet street near Laurelhurst Park, it had white siding, a red front door, and a yard that stretched wide enough to plant the garden I'd dreamed about for years. Mature oak trees framed the property, and I could already imagine mornings with sunlight filtering through their leaves. As soon as we stepped inside, I felt a strange, delicious relief. The living room was bright and airy, with wooden floors that gleamed in the afternoon light. The kitchen had granite counters and plenty of storage, something I'd never had in my cramped apartment. Each bedroom was spacious, with windows that invited the morning sun to wake me gently instead of the blaring horns of traffic. Scout smiled at me, reading my expression. "It's perfect," he said, and I didn't even have to respond. I knew. Moving day was a whirlwind, but a joyful one. The movers handled the heavy boxes, while I arranged the furniture, placing each chair, table, and lamp with careful thought. It was a small act of ownership, but it felt monumental. By the time I sank into the sofa that evening, exhaustion mingled with a quiet triumph. For the first time in decades, I could breathe. No one's demands, no one's noise, no one's expectations intruded on this space. The next morning, I brewed a pot of coffee and carried it out to the backyard. The air was crisp, scented faintly, with the city's early spring blooms. I sat on a small bench beneath the largest oak, letting the sun warm my hands, listening only to birds and the rustle of leaves. It was surreal, and yet entirely real. As I sipped my coffee, the neighbor next door approached. Mrs. Thompson, a spry woman in her 70s, with silver hair pulled into a loose bun, smiled warmly. "You must be the new owner," she said. "I've seen the moving vans. I'm Eleanor Thompson, but everyone calls me Mrs. Thompson. Welcome to the neighborhood." We chatted for a while about the street, the neighbors, and her garden, and I felt an unfamiliar sense of community without obligation. She offered to keep an eye on the house when I traveled, a gesture I accepted gratefully. It was comforting to know that someone trustworthy was nearby, not to interfere, but to watch over this small piece of independence I'd fought so hard to claim. By the end of the morning, I wandered through the rooms again, touching counters, opening cabinets, and letting the reality sink in. This was mine, my space, my sanctuary. After decades of compromise and sacrifice, I finally had a home I could call entirely my own. I spent the morning straightening the house, arranging flowers in vases, and setting plates and glasses on the dining table. Marlene and Henry, my closest friends, were due in the afternoon, and I wanted everything calm, cozy, and intimate. For once, I was in control. The doorbell rang just as I lit candles in the living room. I opened it, expecting Marlene's bright smile, but instead, my parents and Susan stood there. My mother's cheeks were flushed with excitement, yet her smile was tight. My father's hands were in his pockets, posture stiff, scanning every corner. Susan looked unsure, caught between greeting and curiosity. "Surprise," my mother chirped, as if this were entirely natural. I froze. "Mom, Dad, Susan, we thought we'd come by and see your new home," my father said, voice calm but firm. "It's impressive." I forced a smile and stepped aside. "Of course, come in." They wandered through the rooms like explorers, pausing to admire counters, peek into bedrooms, and tap on surfaces. My mother lingered in the kitchen. My father sank into my favorite armchair, patting the leather. Susan drifted aimlessly, peering at the backyard, flickers of awe and doubt crossing her face. Then the lock turned again, and more guests arrived. Relatives I hadn't met before, laughing and greeting each other like invited guests. My heart hammered, but I forced calm. "I'm glad you're enjoying the house," I said, voice steady. "Tea or coffee?" My mother waved vaguely. "No, we're fine. Just, it's all so beautiful. You did well for yourself, Evelyn." I nodded, masking my frustration. Beneath the compliments, I could feel the envy, the subtle judgment, the passive-aggressive comments about space-time and independence. I circulated among my friends, pouring drinks, laughing too loudly to cover the churning thoughts in my chest. This wasn't just intrusion. It was a quiet claiming of my home, a reminder that even in independence, they still felt entitled. By the time my friends arrived, I had decided this house was mine, and no one would take that from me. I was halfway through unpacking a box of photo albums at my sister Margaret's house when my phone rang. The screen lit up with Mrs. Thompson's name. "It's late," I muttered, answering cautiously. "Evelyn." "I'm so sorry to call at this hour," her calm voice said. But there was an edge of tension I couldn't ignore. "I saw lights on in your house, and I can hear voices. Music, too. Are you home?" I laughed nervously, waving off the concern. "Mrs. Thompson, it's just a housewarming cleanup. Maybe a late visitor dropping by. I'm fine here, really. Don't worry. I'm positive, Evelyn. I thought I should tell you." She pressed gently, and I felt a flicker of unease settle in my stomach. I hung up and tried to shake it off, returning to Margaret's living room with a forced smile. But her words echoed in my mind. Lights on, voices, music. I replayed the housewarming party in my head. The uninvited guests, my parents wandering through every room, Susan lingering in corners. Could someone have returned? I shook my head. Surely not. I had locked every door, and the house was still new to them. I'd seen them leave. Still sleep eluded me that night. Every passing hour stretched the doubt further, making shadows behind my eyelids look like figures moving through my rooms. My mind raced, imagining explanations, neighbors with the wrong house perhaps, or a technical glitch with the lights, but the tight knot of worry wouldn't release. By morning, the unease had grown into determination. I couldn't ignore it, not after all the trouble with the housewarming intrusion. I decided to review the security footage. Even if it was nothing I would see for myself. I called Scout to confirm the cameras were all working and that I could access them remotely. Each angle of the yard, each window, and every entryway flashed across my phone screen as I ran through the system. The house seemed empty, serene. Yet I knew that checking it, knowing it was my eyes on the monitors, would bring peace or reveal what I dreaded. I made a quiet promise to myself. Tonight, I would return home and verify everything. If someone was inside, I would know exactly what to do. My sanctuary would not be violated again, not by mistake, not by anyone. I had been staring at my phone for what felt like hours, my thumb hovering over the security app heart, pounding in my chest. Finally, I tapped the icon, and the live feed flickered to life. My stomach dropped. There they were. My parents, Susan, and a group of people I didn't recognize were in my living room, laughing glasses, raised music blaring. My father sank into my favorite armchair, patting the leather as if he had always owned it. My mother hovered near the kitchen, using my dishes, arranging snacks on my counter. And Susan, wandering from room to room, opening closets, examining corners, her face a mixture of curiosity and casual entitlement. The group seemed completely unaware of the violation. They toasted each other, clinked glasses, and moved furniture to make more space for dancing. My jaw tightened. Shocked disbelief and a simmering anger churned inside me. After decades of giving, after a lifetime of sacrifices, this audacious violation was happening right in front of me, in my sanctuary, without any concern for my presence, my boundaries, or my ownership. I gritted my teeth, trying to steady my breath. I could feel every muscle in my body tense. Part of me wanted to storm the house immediately, to scream, to grab keys and demand respect. But another part knew that I needed a clear head, a decisive action that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. I opened the 911 app, fingers shaking as I dialed. "This is Evelyn Harper," I said when the dispatcher answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm watching a live feed from my home in Portland. There are multiple people inside unauthorized, and they're drinking, moving furniture, throwing what seems to be a party. They are not allowed to be there. I'm currently away and cannot intervene physically. Please send officers immediately." The dispatcher asked me to describe the situation and the number of people. I counted them in my head, 8, maybe 9, including my parents and Susan. I confirmed the details, keeping my tone factual, leaving no room for misinterpretation. As I spoke, I glanced back at the feed. My father was gesturing toward the stereo, Susan was laughing with one of the guests, and my mother was pouring wine into a glass that had never been opened before. My chest tightened, a mix of hurt and disbelief pressing down on me. The betrayal stung more than I expected. It wasn't just the trespass. It was that my own family could act so unconcerned about my boundaries, my property, and my trust. "Officers are on their way, ma'am. Stay on the line and keep watching," the dispatcher said. I leaned back, eyes fixed on the screens. I had called the authorities. I had taken control. This was my home, my space, my decision to protect. And for the first time, I felt the surge of empowerment that came with refusing to allow anyone, even those closest to me, to cross the line. The first flash of headlights outside the house reflected off the living room windows. 10 minutes, maybe less, and the consequences would begin to unfold. The flash of red and blue lights outside made my heart pound. Through the security cameras, I watched 2 uniformed officers approach the front door. Inside, the laughter continued, oblivious to what awaited them. I gripped my phone tightly, staying on the line with the dispatcher, counting the seconds until justice arrived. The officers knocked firmly, and the music cut off immediately. My father answered, attempting a calm smile, but it faltered under their stern gazes. "Evening, officers," he said, voice tight. "Ma'am, sir, we've received a report of unauthorized entry and disturbance," the taller officer began, scanning the room. "Please have everyone remain where they are." Confusion rippled through the crowd. Susan's eyes widened, and my mother looked pale, clutching an empty wine glass. Guests fidgeted, murmuring excuses, but the officers held their ground. We thought she was allowing us to, my father stammered, but the officer cut him off. That is not for you to decide. This is a private residence. You are trespassing. The officers methodically walked through the house, noting the alcohol confiscating bottles that had been opened and ensuring everyone remained in the living room. A fine was issued for the illegal party and a stern warning for the illegal entry. My family's faces fell embarrassment and panic, replacing their casual confidence. I stayed on the video feed feeling a strange mix of vindication and calm. For the first time, I didn't have to argue, explain, or fight for my boundaries. The law finally reinforced them for me. My parents shifted uncomfortably. Susan whispered apologies that didn't reach my ears, and the guests shrank into themselves, realizing their mistake. I thought about all the years I had deferred, compromised, and excused behavior for the sake of family harmony. None of it mattered now. My decisions, my space, my home, all were respected without question. I didn't need to raise my voice or plead for understanding. The officer's presence did what I could not alone. It imposed consequence and clarity. When the officers finished, my family lingered stunned and silent. I closed the cameras and set my phone down. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of my independence settle comfortably around me. My home was mine, my boundaries firm and my authority undeniable. The morning sun poured into my backyard as I carried a steaming cup of coffee to the small bench beneath the largest oak tree. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. The chaos of the past weeks, the uninvited housewarming, the betrayal, the police intervention seemed distant, replaced by the calm rhythm of my own choices. I had upgraded every lock, installed a new alarm system, and set up cameras in all the key corners. Each step was a declaration my home was mine, and no one could cross these boundaries again. The reassurance was as comforting as the warmth of the sun on my hands. Mrs. Thompson popped her head over the fence, waving cheerfully. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Yes, thank you," I said, smiling genuinely. I couldn't have done this without knowing someone trustworthy was nearby. We spent a few minutes exchanging gardening tips and laughing about small neighborhood anecdotes. Her presence felt like a protective shield, a reminder that support could exist without obligation or intrusion. Later, I wandered through my home, touching the counter's opening cabinets and arranging the few personal items I had unpacked. Every detail reflected my life, my decisions, and my independence. The betrayal of my family no longer weighed me down. Instead, it had clarified what mattered: my home, my sanctuary, and the peace I'd earned. I sipped my coffee again, listening to the birds and the rustle of leaves. I was secure, content, and empowered. For the first time in decades, I was living entirely on my own terms.